Today we're going to be looking at the second half of section 4.6 on circles. So the first half talked about just the definitions and the parts of circles. Again, we talked about it in class. You can also refer back to your textbook. I recommend making some flashcards or some way for you to review how to identify the parts of the circle and kind of know what their names are, things of that nature, so that when you see the instructions on the quizzes and tests, you'll know what they're talking about. So that's a recommendation for part one. Part two is more, I guess, a step back into math. So we're going to talk about how to calculate a couple things within the circle. We're going to talk about how to calculate the circumference. All right, so on a circle, when we talk about circumference, that is the distance around the outside. For other shapes, we would have called this perimeter, but because a circle technically doesn't have sides, it just has the outer edge, it's called circumference instead. So it's still the outside distance. To calculate the circumference, you have to have the length of, within our circle, from the center, we can have a radius, which again, from part one, the distance from the center to the edge of the circle, or you could have a diameter, and that would be a line that goes all the way through to touch both sides of the circle. Okay. So, depending on which measurement you have for your circle, there's two formulas we can use to find circumference. If you have the diameter, you can use the formula circumference equals pi times the diameter. Now, if you recall, pi is a very specific value. It is rounded to 3.14, and a lot of times in your book we'll use that 3.14, but we remember that it's really a number that goes on, has no repeating values, but has an infinite number of decimal places after it. But we just use 3.14. All right. So we'll put that over here, just as a little note somewhere, that pi is equal to, again, it's rounded to 3.14, or as a fraction, 22/7. So just kind of as a little side note to have in there as well. Now, if we have the radius, now our formula looks like circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius, or 2 pi r. Well, it kind of makes sense that if we had the diameter, that went all the way across. If we just have the radius, a radius technically is half of a diameter, so we would simply be taking that radius times 2, because that would be a diameter, and then take it times pi. So either way, if they give you a diameter, you can just go right to that value times pi, or if you have a radius, take the radius times 2, and then take it times pi. So those are the two ways that we'll use to find circumference of a circle. And we've got a couple examples. All right, it says to find the circumference, round to the nearest tenth when needed. Keep that in mind. If the directions tell you to round to a certain value, make sure you round to that value, because you will miss points if you don't round it accurately. All right, so they're giving us a diameter of 4.8 centimeters. Okay, they didn't put it on a picture, they just told us, hey, diameter is 4.8. So we have to know that's that longer value. So we're going to go to the the circumference equals pi times diameter. Now, we have to know that pi is 3.14, and then we'll use our diameter 4.8. So we can calculate this by hand. We've got 4 times 8, 8 times 1 plus 3, 8 times 3 plus 1, put your 0, and then we've got 4 times 4, 4 times 1 plus 1, and 4 times 3. Alright, so a little review of multiplying with decimals. We see that we have 1, 2, 3 places behind the decimal up here. So 1, 2, 3 in our answer. So we've got 15.072, but the direction said to round to the nearest tenth. Well, if we remember, the tenths place is only 1 place behind the decimal. So before we can, cut this off, we'll take a look at 7, tells us to round it up. So 15.1, and then our value was in centimeters. So 15.1 centimeters is the circumference of this circle. All right. Letter B, a little bit different. Letter B gives us a radius. So we already know we're going to use the radius formula, but then it throws us an extra little curve because it gives us our value with a fraction, okay? So circumference is going to be 2 times pi times the radius, but instead of using 3.14, it's going to be more convenient for us to use the fraction value for pi, that 22/7. All right, so we're going to say that we're taking 2 times the value for pi, 22/7, times our value for the radius, which is 1 1/6. But we're going to go ahead and make this improper. So 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So this is going to be 7/6. All right? So with this in fraction form here, I can go ahead and put that first 2/1. And from here, you can cross cancel if you wanted to, or you could multiply and then reduce. But let's make it as simple as we can. We'll go ahead and cross cancel these 7s. 7 goes into 7 once. 7 goes into 7 once. I can do some cross canceling with 22 and 6 if I divide them both by 2. Divided by 2 is 3. Divided by 2 is 11. All right, and then nothing else cancels. 2 and 1, 1 and 11. Nothing else will cancel, so across the top and across the bottom. 2 times 11 times 1 is 22. And 1 times 1 times 3 is 3. All right, so our value 22/3, which we can make that into a mixed number. 3 goes into 22 7 times with 1 left over. So 7 1/3 inches. Okay. So this is how we find circumference with diameter or with the radius. And again, notice we chose to use 3.14 when it was a decimal or whole number given to us. We chose to use 22/7 when they gave us a fraction. All right, we'll practice more in class.